Hi, the question will appear on your screen in few seconds. Please pause this video to solve the question on your own, and once you are done, resume the video to check the solution. Here is the question. Now let's start with passage analysis. The town council of North Tarrytown favored changing the name of the town to Sleepy Hollow. So we are talking a town named North Tarrytown, and the town council, which is like the governing body, favored changing the name of this town to Sleepy Hollow. So they are this is their preference. They are favoring changing the name of the town to Sleepy Hollow. Let's read further. Council members argued. So now we are being council members argued. So now we have been given the argument of these council members. Let's see what the argument is. That making the town's association, which town's association? This town's association with Washington Irving and his famous legend more obvious, would increase tourism and result immediately in financial benefits for the town's inhabitants. So this is the argument of these council members. What are they saying? What are they arguing? They are saying that making the town's association, this town's association with Washington Irving and his famous legend more obvious will result in something. So what will it result in? It will result in, first thing, increase in tourism, and second thing, immediately it will result in financial benefits of the town's inhabitants. So it is like a cause and effect. The cause is making the town's association with Washington Irving and his legend, famous legend, obvious, more obvious, right? It is still they are not creating it from the scratch, they are making that association more obvious. Now if you link it with the first part that we have read, we are saying that this town council favors changing the name of the town to Sleepy Hollow. And then the argument given is that making the town's association with Washington Irving and famous legend more obvious would result in something. So, what does that mean? It means that change in this name, this change in town's name to Sleepy Hollow is equivalent to making the town's association with Washington Irving and his famous legend more obvious, right? That is why they're saying that they are favoring this name change, and then the argument that they are giving is that making the town's association with Washington Irving and his famous legend more obvious will result in something. So this change in town's name to SH is equivalent to making town's association with Washington Irving and his famous legend more obvious. Now, you may or may not know who Washington Irving is, but from the passage, it seems that this person is a famous person, some celebrity, and who has some legend, maybe some artwork or book for which this person is known, right? So, this is what we get to know. And then what they are saying that this action, this cause, this is the cause, and what will be the effect? There will be two effects, parallel two effects. One is increase in tourism, and second is immediate financial benefits. What does that mean? It means that one thing right now, if let's say 100 tourists are visiting this town per month, 100 tourists per month, then this will increase to maybe 120 or 150 or 200, anything, right? So there will be an increase in tourism. And the second thing is there will be immediate. Immediate means right away. Right away, the town's inhabitants will get financial benefits, which means that their profits, they will get immediate profits, which means that what is meant by financial benefits? It means whatever they are spending, that is their expenses, will become less than their earnings, right? All right. Now, this is what the argument says. And let's now come to the logic. Now, what is the logic here? This connection seems logical that, okay, making this association with WI by changing the name, it will make the association more obvious. Okay. Now, how will that lead to increased tourism? It somehow means that they will attract more tourists. This action, this will attract more tourists. And that is how this effect will take place. Now, where are the logical gaps? So, the first gap, here we get to see that making this association, if they make this association more obvious, then yes, it means that people will be more aware. That is sure that if it becomes more obvious, then people will be more aware that okay, this town is associated with Washington Irving. But does that definitely mean that there will be more tourists? The first gap is we have not been given any reason to believe that why tourism would increase, why people would like to visit that place. No justification has been given for the same. Yes, people will be more aware that this town is associated with Washington Irving, but that does not necessarily mean that tourism will increase, and that link is missing here. We have not been given any reason to believe why this number of tourists or tourism will increase. The second thing is, again, we have not been given any reason or justification for why this immediate financial benefits will be there. For immediate financial benefits, we know that expenses will be less than earnings from if we compare to the current state, but we have not been given any reason to justify that. What if because of all these changes the expenses actually increase? They take some time to it takes some time for the earnings to increase that much. So how will this financial benefit take place and how will it be immediate? That reasoning or that justification is missing, and that is the second logical gap here. Now, with this, because this is an assumption question, it's important to understand the conclusion as well as the negated conclusion. So, the conclusion here is that making this mentioned association more obvious would increase tourism and result immediately in financial benefits for the town's inhabitants. Now, there are, as we discussed, there are two parallel effects. One is increased tourism, and second is immediate financial benefit for town's inhabitants. So the conclusion will break even if one of these effects does not happen, right? It is 1 and 2, right? So when will the conclusion break? The conclusion will break if, let's say, 1 does not happen. There is no increased tourism. Even if there is increased, even if there is immediate financial benefit, but no increased tourism, the conclusion will break. Or let's say tourism increases, but there is no immediate financial benefit. Then also the conclusion will break. And the conclusion will also break if both of these are false. So, in such cases where we have two parallel effects given in the conclusion, or two parallel predictions, two parallel expectations, the conclusion will fail when either of these two is not true or when both of these are not true. So, what will the negated conclusion be? The negated conclusion will be that making the association more obvious would not increase tourism, that is the first case, or would not result in immediate financial benefits, that is the second case, or neither, that is the third case. So the conclusion will break in these three scenarios. With this, let's update our bridge table. So if your understanding of the passage logic was correct and complete, mark a tick here. However, if you missed anything here, mark a cross and write down the exact reason. Did you miss a word or did you misinterpret anything? It is a simple argument, but still, if you missed anything or misinterpreted anything, mark a cross here. Then regarding the conclusion, if you understood the conclusion correctly, mark a tick here. However, it is very much possible that because there are two parallel actions, some of you may think that this is a cause and effect, that increase in tourism would lead to increased financial benefits, something like that. So if that misunderstanding or any other misunderstanding of the conclusion was there, write down the exact reason here, and then we will move to identifying what the correct answer choice needs to convey. So you all have studied that assumption is must be true, which means that if the assumption is not true, the conclusion will fail. This is all. This is something that all of you have studied while studying the assumption concept. Now, what is the assumption doing here? If this is the scenario, what is the assumption exactly doing here? The assumption is preventing the conclusion from breaking, right? That is the role of assumption, which means that if there is any situation in which the conclusion can break, there will be one correct assumption which will make sure that this situation does not happen. In other words, a correct assumption eliminates one condition under which the conclusion would fail. So that gives us one characteristic, one thing to look for in the correct answer choice. The correct answer choice will provide one condition, it will eliminate one condition under which the conclusion will break. And secondly, we know that the assumption will always bring in a new piece of information. So this is what we should be expecting from the correct answer choice. Now, if we bring our negated conclusion now, if we bring the negated conclusion here, our negated conclusion is making the association more obvious would not increase tourism or would not result in immediate financial benefits or neither. So, if we substitute this negated conclusion here, it would be eliminate one condition which conveys that making the association more obvious would not increase tourism or would not result in immediate financial benefits, or neither. And it will bring in new information. Now, if you pre-think, it is very easy for you. Think of any one scenario in which this negated conclusion is true. For example, one scenario can be that making this association more obvious, which is the cause. I am writing in short cause. It will not attract more tourists. Right? This is one scenario. The second scenario can be that the cause will lead to immediate expenses which are higher than revenues for the town's inhabitants. Right? These are two scenarios in which the conclusion can break. The first scenario breaks this first one, not increase tourism, and the second scenario breaks the second one. And you can think of a scenario that can break both of them. Now, your job is to say that this scenario will not happen because you have to eliminate one condition. So, how will you do that? You will say that this cause will attract more tourists, or the cause will not lead to immediate expenses. So, that is how you are eliminating that condition in which the conclusion can break. And both these bring in new pieces of information that are not inferable from the passage. So, you have your pre thought answers ready with you, and you can move to answer choice analysis. Even if you do not pre-think, you have a clear understanding of what you should be expecting from the answer choices. With that, let's move to our bridge table. So, if your understanding of what the correct answer choice needs to convey was correct and complete, mark a tick here. However, if you skipped the step, if you did not think about it, or your understanding was incorrect, mark a cross here. If you skipped it, then this step needs to come into your process. It has to be something that you do regularly for every question. That is a corrective action. If you misunderstood what the correct answer choice needs to convey, then you need to understand why you misunderstood it. Right? You need to get to the root cause and mention that root cause here. With that, let's move to answer choice analysis. Now let's evaluate choice A. So what do we need to do? We need to understand what choice A conveys. Then we need to see if it eliminates one such condition that breaks the conclusion, and does it bring in a new piece of information. So let's do that. What is choice A? Choice A says most of the inhabitants would favor a change in the name of the town. So we are saying that most means more than 50%. So more than 50% of the inhabitants of this town would prefer the change in name. This is about the preference of these inhabitants. So, how will we see whether this choice eliminates one condition that breaks the conclusion or not? The step, the next step for doing that is to negate choice A. What is negated choice A? Most of the inhabitants would not favor a change in the name of the town. So, we are reversing choice A. We are saying that now most of the inhabitants would not favor this change in name of the town. Now, how do we see if this eliminates one such condition that breaks the conclusion or not? If this negated choice, it will break the conclusion. It means that the original choice A was presenting a condition under which the conclusion would fail, which means that the original choice is MBT, and it will be correct if it brings in a new piece of information. So if negated choice A breaks the conclusion, we'll have to see whether it brings in new piece of information or not. If it does, it will be correct assumption. Otherwise, it will not be a correct assumption. However, if negated choice does not break the conclusion, it means that original choice does not present a condition under which the conclusion would fail, which means the original choice is not must be true, and we can reject the choice here itself. We do not need to check for the second characteristic. So let's see if negated choice A breaks the conclusion. So negated choice A is most of the inhabitants would not favor a change in the name of the town. That is more than 50% of these inhabitants would not favor a change. Does that mean their preference? Does that mean that tourism will not increase? No, right? Does that mean that there will not be immediate financial benefits for these people, for the inhabitants? No, their preference does not even indicate that. Does it mean that both of these will not occur, 1 and 2? No, it does not even indicate that both 1 and 2 will not occur. So, negated choice A does not break the conclusion. This scenario is true. And that is why we can say that negated choice is not must be true, and we can reject choice A. Now, if you selected choice A, let's get back to the bridge table. The first thing where you could have faltered is understanding what the choice conveys. That is the meaning of choice A. So if you understood the meaning of this choice correctly, mark a tick here. Otherwise, if you did not understand the meaning, mark a cross here and write down the reason. Did you rush through, or why could you not understand it? It is a simple choice, but you need to mention the reason. The other thing is, did you gauge the alignment? Did you check for whether this choice conveys what the correct answer choice needs to convey. That is the two conditions that we found out. So if you gauge the alignment and still got it incorrect, it means your process here is not correct. You are not able to check for the must be true and the new information correctly. So you need to work on that process. And if you did not, if you skip this step, it means that that is the corrective action. You need to do the step for every choice. You need to see whether the correct answer choice is like, because we have 2 points here. So does it match the two characteristics? You have to do that for every answer choice. If you made a mistake here, mark a cross here and write down the reason here. With that, let's move to choice B. Choice B. Many inhabitants would be ready to supply tourists with information about Washington Irving and his legend. So it is saying that there are many inhabitants, many means multiple inhabitants in the town who would be ready to supply tourists with information. So they will be ready to guide the tourists when they come. They will be ready to guide the tourists about Washington Irving and his legend. So that's what this choice conveys. Now again we have to check for these two conditions. So let's negate choice B. Negated choice B means many inhabitants would not be ready to supply tourists with information about Washington Irving and his legend. Now, this says that okay, there are many such people who will not be ready to do this. But does that mean that it will not increase tourism? No, the tourists may still visit because there can be still other residents who are supplying that information, or they have the government creates audio video devices to provide that information, or they have some other sorts of guide. So it does not mean that the number of tourists will or tourism will not increase. Negated choice B does not lead to this scenario. Then does it mean that the financial benefits will not increase? No, it does not even mean that. Even if there are many inhabitants who do not want to guide these tourists, the financial benefits may still increase. They may be interested in the hospitality, in the food services, multiple other things, because of which their income will increase. Right. So this negated B does not even lead to this scenario, and definitely it does not lead to the scenario in which both 1 and 2 are not happening. That is why negated choice B does not break the conclusion. So this scenario is applicable, which means that the original choice is not must be true, and we can reject choice B right away. We do not need to check for the second characteristic. Now, if you selected choice B, please go back to the bridge table and update it in a similar way as we did for choice A. Get to the root cause behind why you rejected choice B. With that, let's come to choice C. Choice C. The town can accomplish at a very low cost per capita the improvements in tourist facilities that an increase in tourism would require. So this choice is conveying that the town can accomplish, it is possible for the town to get the improvements in tourist facilities that increase in tourism would require at a very low cost per capita. All right, that is what it is conveying. Let's see if it is in line with the characteristic number 1 and 2. So we will negate choice C. Negated choice C is that the town cannot accomplish at a very low cost per capita the improvements in tourist facilities that an increase in tourism would require. Right? They would need to invest more. All right. Does that mean that tourism will not increase? No. It does not mean that tourism will not increase. Tourism can still increase. Does it mean that there will not be an immediate financial benefit? No. In case you thought that it leads to this scenario, you were incorrect. Higher expenses does not mean that they are not getting even higher revenue. It does not eliminate that scenario, right? It is just saying that expenses are more. It is not saying that the revenue that they will be generating in turn is not more. So you cannot arrive at the scenario that they will not have immediate financial benefits, right? So this is also not possible, and definitely 1 and 2 are also not possible. So negated choice C also does not break the conclusion, and that is why choice C is not a must be true condition and is incorrect. We do not need to check for the second characteristic. If you selected this choice, please go and update your bridge table. With this, let's move to choice D. Choice D. Other towns in the region. Now we are talking about other towns in the same region have changed their names to reflect historical associations and have as a result experienced a rise in tourism. So this is about other towns in the same region that have changed their names similarly, that is to reflect historical associations, and as a result they have experienced a rise in tourism. All right, let's see if it eliminates one condition that breaks the conclusion or not. How will we do that? So we will negate choice D. Negated choice D is other towns in the region have not changed their names to reflect historical associations and have not as a result experienced a rise in tourism. So they have basically not done that action, right? So again, here it does not mean that changing the name for this particular town, North Tarrytown, will not increase tourism. So that is not what negated choice D conveys. Neither it conveys that there will not be immediate financial benefits. And the third case is definitely not possible. So again, negated choice D does not break the conclusion, and therefore this choice is not must be true. We do not need to check for the second characteristic. The choice is incorrect. If you selected this choice, please go and update your bridge table. Now let's come to the last choice, which is choice E. The immediate per capita cost to inhabitants of changing the name of the town. So we are talking about the immediate per capita cost to inhabitants. Immediate is in line with this. We are talking about the cost of changing the name of the town for the people, and that is the immediate cost, would be less than the immediate per capita revenue that they would receive from the change. So this cost, basically, the immediate cost is less than the immediate revenue. Let's see if this choice eliminates a condition in which the conclusion breaks. Let's negate choice E. Negated choice E is the immediate per capita cost to inhabitants of changing the name of the town would be equal to or higher than the immediate per capita revenue they would receive from the change. Now, one thing to be noticed here is that we changed. How did we negate that it would be less? We did not negate it by saying that it would be more. We are negating this would be less by saying that it would be equal to or higher, right? So that is the correct way to negate. You cannot ignore this case that it can be equal also. That is also a possibility in which this particular choice will be negated. So now we are saying that the immediate cost will be greater than or equal to the immediate revenue. So does that mean tourism will not increase? No, the tourism can still increase. Does that mean that there will be no immediate financial benefit? What do you say? The answer is yes. If the immediate cost is equal to or greater than immediate revenue, then the inhabitants will not get immediate financial benefits, and that is how this particular choice breaks this scenario, right? And it breaks the conclusion, which means that this original choice E is must be true. Now, does it bring in new information? Yes, it brings in new information, because this is something that the passage does not tell us, that immediate cost will be less than or greater than or equal to the immediate revenue. So it does bring in new information, and that is why this is the correct answer choice. Now, if you rejected this answer choice, it is important to go back to the bridge table and question yourself. Why did you reject the correct answer choice? Did you not understand the meaning, or did you not have a clear understanding of what the correct answer choice needs to convey? Or it may be because of step 1 and step 2 also, that is understanding the passage and the conclusion. Any reason, you need to mention it here. You need to understand what exactly went wrong and why did you reject the correct answer choice. So we are done with this question now, and you have your updated bridge table that tells you what kind of mistakes you made in this question. Hope you will be able to take the corrective actions for these mistakes and not repeat these mistakes in the other questions. If you need any help deciding the corrective actions, do let us know.